Hey there. Ever feel like you're kind of stuck in a movie, but one you can't just hit pause on?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, today we're going deep with philosopher Otmar Lindner, and he kind of thinks in a lot of ways we are.
Hmm, interesting.
His ideas might sound a little, sci-fi at first, but trust me, stick with us.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Lindner basically argues that all this technology and culture we have, it's created this world full of simulations. And honestly, we might not even realize how deep we are in them.
I can see that.
So today, get ready to explore how these simulations, as he calls them, are affecting us, like in our everyday lives.
Right.
And more importantly, how we can start to even notice them and maybe even learn to navigate them differently.
Yeah, that'd be useful.
It's not about escaping this whole simulated reality thing. It's more about, like, understanding it.
Makes sense.
And I think what's really cool is Linder takes this whole thing beyond just technology.
Oh.
He's talking about like a totally fundamental shift in how we experience the whole world.
Oh.
Almost like, when you're caught in a dream, but you've completely forgotten it's a dream,
I can see that.
right? And this is what he calls the world of copies without originals.
Hmm.
What really got me thinking was how he compared it to Plato's cave. You familiar with that?
Vaguely. Remind me.
It's that classic story where you got these people, they're chained up and can only see shadows on a wall,
Right, right.
and they think those shadows are like all of reality.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it made me think, are WE doing the same thing, but with all these images and videos and online personas we're always surrounded by?
That's a pretty powerful analogy, especially in our digital world.
It is, right.
I mean, think about how much of our day is spent just consuming these shadows, but on screens instead of a cave wall.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And how often are we, like, actually mistaking them for the real deal?
Exactly. Like, even when we're trying to be all authentic online, aren't we really just putting together a certain image?
Oh.
And it makes you wonder, does that pressure to perform online actually make us not genuine when we're interacting with people, face to face?
That's an interesting thought. What do you think?
I think it's a super slippery slope. You know what I mean?
I do.
We start off sharing like the highlights of our lives.
Right.
Then we're carefully crafting these online personas, and all of a sudden, bam, the line between what's real and what's simulated is totally blurred.
And that's where Lindner's breakdown of this progression comes in. He lays it out in four distinct stages.
Oh yeah, the stages. Okay, that's really helpful for understanding how we like slip into this simulation thing without even noticing.
It really is.
Okay, so remind me, what's that first stage again?
It's what he calls the basic image.
Basic image. Okay.
Think about, like, old photographs or those realistic paintings.
Right, right.
They're copies of reality, for sure, but they're grounded in something real, something tangible.
Yeah.
We know they're just representations, but they're fairly faithful to that original.
So at this stage, we're still aware of the difference between like the copy and the real thing.
Exactly.
But then what happens?
Well, stage two is where things get a little, well, trickier. Lindner calls it the distorted image.
Distorted image.
Yep. Now we're dealing with stuff that's deliberately, like, manipulated. It's meant to shape how we see things.
Ooh, I see where this is going.
Think about Instagram, right? You got those filters that make everything look perfect and airbrushed.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or those reality TV shows.
Mhm.
They're edited specifically to create drama, to make it more exciting than real life.
Right.
We know it's not totally real, but it still messes with how we see things.
It's true. Like we're constantly seeing these like idealized images, and it starts to mess with our expectations, I think,
Totally.
about beauty, success, even happiness.
It's a lot to process.
But at least at this stage, there's still some connection to reality, even if it's been like tweaked a bit.
Right. So what about the next level? What happens then? Well, that's where we get into masked absence.
Mask absence. Okay, that sounds kind of creepy.
It is kinda. This is where things get really interesting because now images are pretending to be real, but there's no original to even be found.
Oh, wait. What do you mean?
Think of those influencer posts that are totally staged,
Mm-hmm.
but made to look candid.
Right.
Or even entire online personas that are, like, meticulously crafted to project a specific image.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's all about creating this illusion of reality that's not really there.
That's kind of unsettling when you think about it.
It is.
Like we're surrounded by all these images that are claiming to be authentic, but they're totally made up.
Hmm.
And I bet most of us don't even realize how much of that stuff we're like absorbing every day.
Probably not.
But wait, it gets even wilder, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a fourth stage, the final stage.
Right, and this one takes us totally digital, pure simulation.
Pure simulation. Okay.
Images and experiences that only exist online. They have nothing to do with any tangible reality.
Wow.
Think virtual worlds, online games, even those text conversations that are just like walls of emojis.
Oh my gosh, yes. You're right.
They're like replacing real human interaction.
Sometimes I think I react more strongly to an emoji than I would to the actual words, you know?
Oh, no, it's weird.
But we haven't even touched the metaverse yet. That's like a whole simulated reality.
Exactly.
It's crazy to think how far we've come from those basic images, those simple photographs and paintings.
It is, and that's the insidious thing.
What's that?
Each stage blends into the next so smoothly that we barely notice it happening.
Oh, that's true.
We go from taking a simple picture
Uh-huh.
to crafting these elaborate online personas,
Right.
from watching a documentary
Yeah.
to getting totally lost in virtual worlds, and
Uh-huh.
suddenly, boom, we're living in a reality that's heavily influenced, mediated even, by all these simulations.
So it's not just gentlest that technology has created these simulations, right? It's more like our whole culture has become so immersed in them that we don't even question them anymore.
Yeah, it's become the norm.
And that's what I think is so thought-provoking about Lindner's work.
Totally agree.
He's not just talking about pixels and algorithms. He's talking about how this whole digital world is literally rewiring our brains.
The big claim.
It is. And it makes you wonder, how is this constant exposure to simulations changing us? How's it impacting our relationships, our self-perception, even our ability to just experience the world, like genuinely?
Yeah, how are we experiencing things in a genuine way these days?
That's what I want to explore next.
Yeah.
Let's dive into how these simulations are showing up in our daily lives.
Okay, let's do it.
And more importantly, what can we do about it?
You know, what's really interesting is that Lindner doesn't see this whole simulation thing as like a purely modern problem.
Oh, really?
He connects it back to like ancient philosophy.
Oh, wow.
Almost like, humanity has always been wrestling with this question of what's real and what's just an illusion.
That's a great point.
Yeah, like he talks about Plato's allegory of the cave, which we were just discussing.
Right.
But he also brings in these ideas from like Eastern philosophies.
Like what?
Things like the concept of Maya in Hinduism and Buddhism,
Okay.
which is all about how the world we perceive is actually an illusion.
Huh. So it's like these ancient traditions were already thinking about how our senses can kind of trick us.
Exactly.
And this was way before we had smartphones and virtual reality and all that.
Way before.
It makes you wonder if there's something about being human, that just makes us prone to these simulations,
Maybe.
whether they're created by technology or just like by our own minds.
That's a deep thought.
So if that's true, does that mean we're stuck? Like, are we doomed to be trapped in this simulated world forever?
Not at all. Lindner's actually pretty optimistic, believe it or not.
He is.
Yeah. He thinks that just recognizing the simulation is a huge first step.
Okay.
It's like waking up inside the dream.
Ooh, like lucid dreaming.
Exactly.
Okay, so instead of trying to, escape the simulation completely, which might be impossible anyway,
Right.
we need to become more aware of it, like really see it for what it is.
Yes.
But how do we even do that? That sounds kind of hard.
Well, Lindner gives us some pretty practical tips.
Okay, I'm listening.
One thing is he wants us to be more conscious of how we react to experiences.
What do you mean?
Like instead of instantly grabbing your phone to document every single thing, he suggests we pause
Okay.
and really experience it. Just be in that moment, without feeling like you have to filter it or share it with everyone.
I know I'm totally guilty of that.
We all are.
I'm always thinking about how I'm going to capture something for social media.
Yeah.
Instead of just enjoying it. It's like we've forgotten how to just be.
Right.
Just be present.
Exactly. And that's just one example.
What else?
Lindner also says we should create these simulation-free zones in our lives.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, times and places where we consciously disconnect. Like put the phone down, step away from the screens, and just engage with the real world.
Okay, so give me an example.
It could be going for a walk in nature without your phone,
Yeah, I could do that.
or having dinner with friends or family and everyone agrees to put their devices away.
Ooh, a digital detox dinner party.
Exactly.
I love it. But let's be real. We can't just like unplug completely from technology, can we?
No, no, of course not. Lindner gets that.
Okay.
It's not about rejecting tech altogether. That's just not realistic these days. It's more about being more intentional, more choosy about how we use it.
So it's like technology is a tool, right?
Right.
And like any tool, it can be used in good ways or bad ways.
Exactly.
It's up to us to decide how we want to use it.
You got it.
So how do we do that? How do we become more conscious users of technology, especially when it comes to all these simulations everywhere?
Well, Lindner talks about this thing called simulation literacy.
Simulation literacy. Okay, that's a new one.
It's kind of like media literacy, how to critically analyze what you're seeing and hearing.
Yeah.
But it goes a bit deeper. It helps us understand how these digital simulations are actually made
Okay.
and how they can influence our thoughts, our feelings, even how we act.
So it's like learning to like decode the matrix.
Exactly. You're seeing the code.
Seeing the code, yeah.
And just like learning any new skill, it takes practice.
Right, practice.
Lindner says we got to start paying attention to the patterns, the clues that tell us we're dealing with a simulation.
Okay, so like what kind of patterns are we looking for?
Notice when you're seeing a distorted image, one of those too good to be true things.
Okay,
Or a masked absence, something that looks real but isn't.
got it.
Or even a pure simulation. Pay attention to how it makes you feel, how it shapes your view of things, and how it might even be pushing you to do something.
It's like we got to become detectives of the digital age.
I like that.
We're always on the lookout for clues that reveal how the simulation is working.
That's a good way to put it.
And the more we do that, the easier it'll be to spot those simulations and not get like sucked into them.
Exactly.
It's about taking back control of our attention, our focus.
Yes.
Which is so important in a world that's constantly trying to grab our attention.
It is. And remember, this isn't just about stuff happening out there.
What do you mean?
It's about those simulations we create in our own minds, too.
Oh, right.
Like those stories we tell ourselves, those
Okay.
limiting beliefs, those negative thought patterns, those perfect versions of ourselves that we think we need to be.
Yeah, those idealized self-images that keep us from just being ourselves,
Exactly. We can get so caught up in those internal simulations that we forget they're not even real.
It's like we're trapped in our own heads.
Exactly. We start believing we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough, and those thoughts, they can control our whole reality.
So it's like a self-made mental prison. We're trapped by our own fears and insecurities. How do we break out of that?
Well, it starts with awareness, just like with the external simulations.
Okay.
Notice those negative thoughts, those limiting beliefs, when they pop up.
Right.
Pay attention to how they make you feel, how they affect what you do.
Okay, so I notice them, then what?
Then you got to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this even true?
Is this even true?
Okay. What evidence do I have that this is real? And most importantly, is this thought actually helping me? Or is it holding me back?
I like that. It's like we become our own therapist, right?
Exactly.
We gently question those negative thought patterns
Yeah.
and swap them out for something more positive, something that empowers us. But that probably takes time, right?
It does. It's a process, not a quick fix.
It's not like we could just like flip a switch and suddenly we're immune to all those negative thoughts.
No, it takes work.
But even baby steps can make a big difference.
Right. Absolutely. Start by getting to know your inner critic. That voice that's always putting you down.
Oh, yeah, I know that voice.
We all do. Once you recognize it, you can start to challenge it.
Yeah.
Look for evidence that contradicts what it's saying.
Right.
Focus on your strengths, what you're good at.
Right.
Remind yourself of things you've accomplished. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, who believe in you.
That makes sense. It's like we got to practice self-compassion, right?
Yes.
Accepting ourselves even with all our imperfections and, the tough times.
Exactly.
It's about remembering we're all works in progress, and that's totally okay.
It is. And as we become more aware of those simulations inside our heads and learn to question them, we make room for something new to grow.
What's that?
A more authentic, more empowered version of ourselves.
I like that.
We start to see ourselves more clearly without all those filters and distortions.
We see the real us.
Exactly. And that lets us live more fully, more freely in the world, both online and offline.
This is also fascinating, but I'm wondering how we can make it more, like, tangible.
Oh, good point.
How do we actually APPLAY these big ideas to everyday life? In practical ways. I bet our listeners are wondering that too. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, how do we actually bridge that gap between these big kind of philosophical ideas and, like, our everyday lives.
Exactly.
It's one thing to talk about, simulation literacy and all that,
Yeah.
but how do we actually use it?
Right.
What are some things we could, actually DO?
Well, one of the most useful tools that Lindner gives us is this idea of, simulation spotting.
Simulation spotting.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
It's all about training ourselves to, recognize those moments when we're bumping into a simulation in our everyday life.
Okay.
It's kind of like a game, almost.
Ooh, I like games. Okay, so
Right.
what are we looking for?
Right.
What are the, signs that we're dealing with a simulation?
It could be anything, really.
Okay.
Like a super filtered photo on Instagram.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Or maybe a news story that just feels a little too perfect,
Yeah, yeah, like it's pushing a certain agenda.
Exactly. Even those ads, the ones that seem to know exactly what you're thinking
Oh
about.
my gosh, yes. The targeted ads, they're creepy.
They are kind of creepy, and they're a form of simulation, too.
Wait, really? How?
Think about it. They're creating this, personalized bubble for you
Okay.
based on algorithms and data, not on what you actually need or care about.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, they're trying to influence you, what you buy, what you think.
So, okay, how do we get better at this whole simulation spotting thing? Is it just, paying more attention?
It's more about developing, critical awareness.
Critical awareness, okay.
Start by just asking yourself some simple questions when you see something, read something, anything.
Like what?
Where's this information coming from? What's the person or the company? What are they trying to do with this information?
Right.
Are they trying to sell me something? Convince me of something? Make me feel a certain way?
Okay.
And then the most important question.
What's that?
Does this actually line up with my own WN values?
Right.
My understanding of the world?
So it's like we become smarter consumers of information.
Exactly.
Not just taking everything in, passively,
Right.
but really thinking about it, questioning it.
You got it.
And I bet the more we do that, the easier it becomes to spot those simulations
Totally.
and not get so caught up in them.
Exactly. It's like you're building a muscle.
A muscle, huh?
The more you work it, the stronger it gets.
I like that analogy.
And, that means you'll be better able to resist, just automatically believing or reacting to everything you see online.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're taking back control
You are.
of our attention.
Yeah.
What we focus on.
Yes. And that feels pretty good, right?
It does. Yeah. It's empowering.
Especially in a world that's constantly bombarding us with information and distractions and, trying to grab our attention every second.
It's overwhelming sometimes.
It is.
But remember, all this, it's not Jay's tea about those external simulations, the stuff out there in the world.
Oh, right. Good point.
Lindner also wants us to pay attention to the simulations we create in our own minds.
Yes, absolutely.
You're talking about, those stories we tell ourselves, right?
It's exactly. Those narratives we've built up, our limiting beliefs, negative thoughts, those perfect versions of ourselves that we think we're supposed to be.
Right. All those things that stop us from being our true selves.
Yes. And we can get so caught up in those internal simulations that we forget to even question if they're true.
We just believe them blindly.
Right. We start thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy.
Oh, I know those thoughts.
And those beliefs, they can shape our entire reality.
So what do we do?
Well, just like with the external simulations, it starts with awareness.
Okay, so notice the thoughts.
Right. Notice those negative thoughts and those beliefs that are holding you back.
Okay.
And pay attention to how they make you feel, how they make you act.
And then what?
Then you start to question them.
Question them.
Yeah, ask yourself, is this really true?
Is this really true?
What evidence do I have to back this up?
Okay.
And most importantly, is this belief actually helping me? Or is it hurting me?
It's like we become our own therapist.
That's a great way to put it.
We're challenging those negative thought patterns.
Yes.
And then we can try to replace them with something better.
Exactly. Something more positive, more empowering.
But that's got to take time, right?
It does, yeah. It's a process, not a quick fix.
It's not like we can just snap our fingers and suddenly we're all positive and confident.
Nope, it takes practice.
But even little steps can make a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
So where do we start?
We'll start by just getting to know your inner critic, that voice in your head that's always putting you down.
Oh, yeah, we all have that voice.
We do. Once you know what it sounds like, you can start to challenge it.
Okay, how do we challenge it?
Look for evidence that what it's saying is not true.
Okay.
Focus on your strengths, the things you're good at.
Right. Yeah.
Remember the things you've achieved.
Okay, yeah.
Surround yourself with people who support you, who believe in you.
It's about being kinder to ourselves, right?
It is.
Having more self-compassion,
Yeah.
accepting ourselves, flaws and all,
Exactly.
remembering that we're all works in progress, and that's perfectly fine.
It is. And as we become more aware of those simulations we're creating in our own minds,
Mhm.
and we start to question them,
Yeah.
it opens up space for something new to come through.
Oh, what's that?
A more authentic, more empowered version of
I
ourselves.
like that. A better version of ourselves.
We see ourselves more clearly without all the filters and distortions.
We can finally see the real us.
Exactly. And that allows us to live more fully, more freely in the world, both online and offline.
This is all so inspiring. Like, it gives me hope.
Me too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lindner's work,
Yeah.
what are, like, the key takeaways? What do you want our listeners to remember?
Well, first remember, the simulation isn't the enemy.
Okay.
It's a tool, just like anything else. It can be used for good or bad. It's up to us to choose how we want to use it.
Right. It's our choice.
It is. And remember that simulation literacy thing we talked about. Cultivate that. Start paying attention to those simulations you see every day, both online and offline.
Be a simulation spotter.
Exactly. And the most important thing, remember you have the power to choose
Choose what?
how you participate in this simulated world.
We have the power. I love that.
We do. We're not just passive recipients of this stuff. We're active participants. We get to choose what we consume, what we focus on, what we create.
And we can create a better digital world, right?
We can.
A world that's more authentic, more connected, more meaningful.
Exactly. And as we become more aware, more conscious of this simulated reality,
Yeah.
we open ourselves up to new possibilities for connection, for creativity, even for personal growth.
It's almost like we're not just escaping the simulation.
Right.
We're actually, like, transforming it.
From the inside out.
And maybe that's the real key
Yeah,
to unlocking its true potential.
maybe it is.
Well, on that note, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Until next time.